Joe Partavilla. You are listening to the Forbes Books Podcast, and my guest this week might have trouble renting a car, but he has no issues when it comes to starting a business. Even though he's only 23, he's already founded a record label, digital marketplace, and online publication. But his latest company aims to disrupt the education industrial complex. His name is Milan Kordestani, and he's the founder and CEO of Audo, a company that's helping Gen Z find new ways to gain professional skills without attending college. Milan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So, Milan, I do not want to make this conversation all about age, but I feel I need to address the elephant in the room and the fact that you are a 23-year-old tech founder. So I can't just let that go. I can't just have this whole conversation and not mention the fact that you are 23 years old and founded a company. So if you don't mind, just sort of humor me a little bit here and tell me how a 23-year-old founds a company.
Well, okay, it's not that atypical, right? Like a lot of technology companies are founded by young people, but it's interesting. My story starts with me actually as a middleman for selling turtles, rare breeds of turtles from a breeder in San Francisco to, aquarium enthusiasts in the South and in Middle America. So I've always been interested in kind of building businesses and being a part of that. But in college, it became a moment of me being really entrepreneurial and wanting to pull everyone else up with me. And to get that to scale, that's kind of the moment when it starts to grow into a company.
Interesting. And the turtle thing, was that on the up and up? It's not like one of these, one of these illegal lion selling operations, right? This is all on the up and up?
Yeah, no. So this is all legal. It's pretty interesting. I mean, it basically was people breeding rare breeds of turtles, like albino turtles or like turtles that have shells that are almost shaped like mohawks. And it's just, you just change the incubation and choose the traits you're breeding for based on, the animals you breed. But it's pretty cool. It's like having rare fish in your aquarium. And so that's kind of what I did. And it's still a big business, actually.
Wow.
I don't do it anymore, but yeah, you could, if you look up turtlesource.com, you could see a lot of these turtles.
That's funny. So in a way, there was Tiger King. You were the Turtle King, right? It sounds like.
Okay. I don't know. The Tiger King comparison isn't ideal because, he's an animal abuser.
Right.
These turtles are living in some of the highest quality conditions. They're treated like royalty.
Got it. All right. So but I will question here. It's not the most natural transition to go from turtles to tech. So talk to me how Audo came to be.
Sure. Let's see. So I stayed along the path of being interested in agriculture and in ecosystems, so much so that I went and I studied environmental science in college. And I went to Colorado College, which has this really unique program. You take one class at a time for 3.5 weeks. It's called a block program. And then you take the next. So it allows you to really have time outside of class to, dive deeply into the subject that you are focused on, but two, outside of class to be able to explore or build or research whatever else it is that you're interested in. And for me, that ended up being startups. But the transition, I guess I would say, is, I think the agriculture and environmental background that I had, I raised chickens also a lot in high school.
Of course you did.
Sold their eggs and did a lot of research on saffron production, originally being Iranian. But, all of that, I think, really helped teach me, one, how can you create a product? One was a chicken, or in another case, chickens and eggs, and one was a turtle. And two, how can you sell that, find a market, etc. But with Audo, this company, it's really about ecosystems, right? Like the idea that to build anything sustainable, it has to be an ecosystem that's really clear and people just go about their day and it's almost gamified, right? Like there's a hand at play that's taking care of you and pushing you along the way for good things.
Okay. And so, this it's an interesting time to have this conversation. We're recording this a week after President Biden decided to wipe out a bunch of people's college debt. And I want to get your take on this because it sounds like you're very passionate about this.
Yes.
I dropped out of college and started a career in broadcasting, and that worked out well for me. But we're living in this world where if you don't have a BS or BA on your resume, you probably won't even get to the recruiter's desk. We're in this world where you have to have a college degree. What is your take on this sort of ecosystem that's sort of really just developed over the last 20, 30 years, where it used to be, Milan, I don't know if you remember these days, but a high school diploma was plenty for you to get a job. Those days are long gone. Now you need to have that college degree. So what's your take on the way we are operating business, the life of college to business today?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I would agree with you that I think in the past and perhaps even up until very recently, that college degree could guarantee some amount of success in recruiting. But the truth is that even then, when you're going and your application is sitting in front of a recruiter, what they're looking for is that, do you have real experience in the field? Have you had 4 years of working in that industry, and can you bring any value or experience? Or are we going to have to teach you everything, but we just assume you're smart because you graduated from college and you did well? So that's the question that we're trying to solve, is that 4 years in the field. And we believe that education should be incremental. Every time you complete a course or you gain a new skill, you should be able to monetize that. And so I guess to touch on the debt and the relief that Biden just put in place, it's a quick and temporary fix. It was a small relief for individuals who are struck with debt for a very long time. The average debt holder has it for 20 years for student debts. And it's not going to prevent the next generation from going through that. So that's kind of what we exist to do, is try to fight that and create an alternative to that route, because I really believe that this next generation is going to be able to gain employment through having tangible skills that they can monetize, and they can be hired to work for, directly out of high school or soon thereafter.
Yeah. I mean, I worry, Milan, my thing with this whole focus on being college educated is, nowadays, as you know, everything's automated. AI is sifting through all these resumes. Human beings are not getting the resume first. It's going through this sort of AI program that's filtering all the and this is sort of like the recruiting world's dirty little secret. If they see these certain things that don't show up, they pretty much go into the trash bin. So it's great that you're able to sort of change the game here, because now you're making it more skills oriented as opposed to just, where you went to spend 4 years of your life at.
Definitely. The need for skills, the focus on skills, I think is really important. We started out, right? Like we were talking earlier, I started this company in college, and in college, what we started to do was create a marketplace like an Upwork, where students could come and freelance. The only students who were successful and we gained traction with on that marketplace among college students were student athletes and finance majors. Student athletes were certified to be nutritionists or personal trainers. They could create meal plans. They could help create workout schedules. Finance majors were able to help, manage QuickBooks because they had a certification in that. But that was kind of the light bulb moment. Okay, if everyone has to be certified to actually be valuable on a marketplace, then we have to focus on those skills. And if those people can't land jobs even after college because the workplaces don't want to teach them, they don't want to focus on development, they want people who are ready to go and able to deliver, then we have to incrementally give you work as you're gaining those skills. So that's what we do. We pair the marketplace with upskilling. And to touch back on what you were saying about that challenge of AI going through resumes and such, the problem really is that LinkedIn or whatever it is that's going through those resumes doesn't come back to you and say, the reason you didn't land this job and the candidate that did is because they had these two, elements in their resume or in their background that made them more successful, or that were closer aligned to what the recruiter was looking for. So we're hoping to use tech and this whole ecosystem, keeping it all connected, to be able to deliver those, those results or that information to our users so they can improve themselves and have a higher chance of landing the jobs they want.
Awesome. Well, do you mind walking me through how Audo works? Because you mentioned how AI is a big driver of the company, but can you just walk us through, just from beginning to end, how people can get involved with Audo and what is the end game with it?
Yes. So it's really meant to be adaptive and personalized for anyone. So what happens is you come in and let's say you have no idea what you want to do. We'll take me at 19 years old or 18 years old, who had just finished being a chicken farmer, and I kind of knew I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to start working, but I didn't know where to start. I go through this personality assessment, and it will push me to, it could be digital marketing, it could push me to software engineering, graphic design, product design, a whole array of curriculum. And anyways, it'll basically ask me personality questions, and it's adaptive. With every answer I give it, it learns where to push me next. And those questions in that personality assessment, we learned from Myers-Briggs and Dark Triad. There's all of these amazing personality assessments out there. So, and they're open source. So we borrowed from those and kind of pulled them all together to make a really powerful, fast assessment on personality. From there, you could go through the experience assessor next. That's usually what happens. So if it says that, all right, Milan, you are going to be a product designer, and because we know you love music, we want you to be a product designer in the music industry. So your long-term goal should probably be to try to land a job at, a distribution company, a music distribution company like a TuneCore or a DistroKid. That's what we know. That's the current trajectory, let's say. Then we go into the experience assessor and we say, okay, I was a chicken farmer. That's my only experience thus far. And the next questions it'll ask me will be questions about how, what experience did you have managing significant amounts of animals, and how closely did you work with those animals? I give it that feedback. And then it'll say, okay, well, based on the resumes that we're running in our database against where we want to see you going, which is graphic design, we have to ask certain questions. So did you have experience dealing with problems of irrigation, where there might have been leakages? Did you have to deal with disease or illness in your flock? Yes. Okay. So now they know I have a higher ability to problem solve. So that's kind of what we do. We assess you all to then recommend you the best curriculum. And this is really what's part of our secret sauce. So that assessment is to help understand you better, and you can always come back. And if you change who you are, or your personality changes, or your goals, we can capture that and help you adapt your recommended path. But in that recommendation, the path that we provide for you, your career path, we'll say, all right, on your path to become this product designer, really there's 3 courses you can take right now that would be able to get you monetizing your skills and making money while you keep taking curriculum.
Wow.
So let's start with logo design. That's one that we're going to recommend you. And that comes from Coursera. And again, because we know you're interested in music, we're going to also recommend you, let's say, a music intro to music industry or music business or music technology even from edX. And we pair those 2 pieces of curriculum together to just make a really powerful, unique recommendation. And so the users take that, and as they complete those courses, they'll get pinged with notifications saying, hey, on our marketplace, someone is looking for a logo design for around $30 right now. They're looking for a 48-hour turnaround. Do you want to attempt to do this? They're looking to have this cheap and quick. This would be your first opportunity to prove what you can do. So that's what we're doing. We want it to be incremental. Every course or certification that you get or complete, you can then make money off of that and continue on that journey to upskill.
There's a lot to unpack there, Milan. So thank you for breaking that down. But because there's a lot, and the reason I say that is because it's not just like, I can't even imagine how you would pitch this to investors, because it's not like something you could be like, hey, we're the Fiverr of this, because in a way you do kind of the Fiverr stuff, but then you also have this AI personality test, which is totally different from all that. So how are you able to, you did a great job of explaining it to me, someone who's not that bright. So how are you able to explain this to investors and potential partners? Because it's more than just like a slug line. You can't just say, how everything is. It's the Etsy of this. You can't do that. So how are you able to position it?
Well, we can put it in a nutshell, right? We call it a career building and management ecosystem. And so everything else that I mentioned or broke down, they're just components of that. There's AI, there's an assessment. We use powerful data from LinkedIn and others. But so look, when we talk to partners and investors, I speak strategically on what they would care most about. So to partners like Coursera and edX, right? Their greatest goal is course completion, proving that their curriculum is valuable, and those are really the 2 highest metrics that they care most about. So for us, we go to them and say, look, we are not trying to come and be a competitor of yours. We're not creating any curriculum. We want to be the marketplace that sells your curriculum to users by making it more valuable in 2 ways. One, by connecting it to curriculum outside of your network from other partners, because there are niches, there are other focuses that other providers have. There's other types of learning, whether you're a visual learner, an auditory learner, whatever it is, right? Like we can bridge all of that. And so that's one. They're really interested in that, the bridging of curriculum to make their curriculum more valuable. And the second is being able to say that their curriculum actually results in people making money from the marketplace. And so we validate that their curriculum is actually, netting a positive result.
Interesting. And let's dig into the AI a little bit. I mean, obviously, you're not going to divulge any company secrets, but this sounds like some serious Minority Report stuff, what you're doing here. Can you explain how the process of it, putting the AI program together, how did that go?
Yes. So there's a couple different components here. I guess the first place to start with is the data. So we pull data from as many sources as possible and just constantly. We need to know what the job market is asking for and what success in the job market looks like. And so there's different types of data that we pull for that, but let's say one of them is LinkedIn and we have resumes. So that database of seeing where people progressed in their career, to go from one step to the other, they went, say we're looking at a digital marketer at Red Bull. We would see that, all right, this person's been there for 2 years now. And to land that title, they perhaps had to start out as a junior social media manager. Before that, they were an intern somewhere else. They went to college and they gained these skills under this major, etc. Maybe they have other certifications from other courses. We take all of that and we use AI to pair and one, to analyze that data, but two, to then be able to create user profiles or to analyze user profiles based on the data they gave us in their assessment and pair that back. So we have to analyze all of this, we create models to analyze all of these resumes to then be able to give recommendations that are custom tailored to the individual. So one, there's AI in part that we have to learn who you are. That's through the assessment. But the really much more complex and the secret sauce here is that we are pulling tons of data in to be able to give you really accurate recommendations on what the job market is asking for in terms of skills.
And this is going to be a silly question, but is there another auto out there? Like I can't even think of another company that's doing what you're doing, but are there anyone doing even remotely close to what you're trying to accomplish here?
So there's some other places out there, right? So there's boot camps, for example, where you can go to a coding boot camp and they will give you all the curriculum and you either decide to give them 10% of your salary away for the next 10 years or whatever else. There's also Fiverr, for example, the marketplace. They just purchased an education company. They're trying to upskill their workers because they're trying to increase the value that their freelancers are offering users. But there's nothing quite as holistic as this. This idea of data speaking to, from earning and learning, the two speaking to each other, and using that in a gamified way for good, which is the bottom line of users making more money, becoming successful. That's quite unique, I think, to us.
Mm-hmm. And, I know I didn't want to make this all about age, but you are Generation Z. What does Generation Z think about, what we've been talking about, the fact that, you don't need a college degree anymore. Do you need a college degree? Like, what's the take on your generation? Because, the older generations, millennials, Gen Xers, it was all about you got to get that piece of paper on the wall. What's the feel? I know you're not going to speak for the entire generation, but from the people you speak to, and what does your generation think about like the old school college route?
So it's really interesting. I think, the first question is we have to decide what people are going to college for, an experience, for time to connect with other individuals, network, leave their home, get away, and can afford to do that. And then there's the majority of individuals who are going to these institutions and taking out loans, even though they can't really afford to go there, because they are buying into the promise that if they go there and they graduate with a degree, they'll get a higher paying job. Gen Z is now, we're a smart generation because we've all grown up on the internet and just having constant access to information. So I think Gen Z is looking at the data and seeing that, the president is having to relieve people of this debt that was supposed to be an investment in themselves, right? They took out these loans as an investment in their future and their career, and it's not paying off. So I think Gen Z is definitely questioning what they can do. We see it in the data all the time. Gen Z is more interested in side hustles and having, pursuing their dreams, even taking less pay to be able to accommodate, a nomadic lifestyle, which is now possible in the digital age. So, there's a lot of questions, I think, in Gen Z's mind. And, I think time will tell if the solutions we're creating, the private sector is creating, will be able to battle these old institutions that unfortunately are not delivering as well right now. But that's what I think is happening right now. A lot of questioning.
Yeah, and I don't want to use the word corrupt, but I will use it here. But I feel like the whole education system is corrupt in a way that In what other world would you let someone who's 16, 17, 18 years old sign for a loan that's like $200,000, $300,000? Like, to me, that's mind-boggling, especially with the cost of tuitions going up year by year, that a 17-year-old would not be able to buy a house. A 17-year-old could, without, getting a parent signature or something like that. The fact that these people are making such a huge life-changing decision and life-affecting decision, that's the part of it that I can't grasp, how no one has ever stepped in to find a way to fix this problem.
It's pretty absurd. It doesn't make sense to me, and the more I learn about it, the less it seems logical to me. One, because it's of course not paying out. On average, people are holding that debt for 20 years after graduation. And then the other part of it is that the government is basically saying it's kind of worthless too. If you file for bankruptcy, the government will bail you out of all your other debts, pretty much, with exception to your student loans, in the majority of cases. It's pretty crazy that even if you file for bankruptcy, they're like, nope, sorry, you made this bad investment in your education. You fell for it. I'm very upset at the system and trying to figure out how we can be a really sustainable alternative.
And, it's funny with the pandemic and the fact that people can work from home, and now you're seeing a lot more places offer remote work possibilities full time. And one of the things you preach upon is upskilling and people learning more skills. And that's something that, because of the internet and people are home and don't have to be in an office and distracted, they could actually work a job and also take one of these classes. So so much is shifting that we don't even know what the end result of this is going to be, right?
That's definitely true. We talk about college students a lot and how, to an extent, they could still use this, because you could be in school taking your regular curriculum and probably still have enough free time to learn some skills on the side and, work a few hours a week on a digital marketplace. So remote work has really transformed the possibilities for work. And again, the data is speaking to it, saying that remote work, in theory, is going to, when it's successful, when companies can successfully run a remote company, they can outperform companies that are or have been historically successful in person, because it's just so much more optimized and there's so much more communication and understanding and integration with your life. So there's a lot of potential here. And
you're 23 years old, and for the past 20 years, companies have been trying to create the perfect work culture. Like, Milan, in the 80s, no one even knew what work culture meant. That was not even a thing. This was a thing that happened through the dot-com boom of the early 2000s until today. So now, all of a sudden, you're seeing these companies like, hey, listen, it took us 20 years to develop this. Now you want everyone working from home. That's the pushback you're going to get from a lot of these old school companies. And when I say old school, I'm talking like Apple. Apple's having people go back to work in September. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they've spent a generation from Steve Jobs' days building the culture that they have there, that now they're like, wait a minute, we did all this work, now we don't want to screw it up. So what's your take on the culture remote work argument that a lot of these companies have?
I think there's a middle ground, because I know that a lot of young people, especially my friends and even myself to an extent, benefit from those in-person interactions. Being there in person, learning, seeing what other people are doing, just kind of being in that world and mindset, there's a lot of value there. But on the other side of it, I don't think it's worth forcing, in full forever. I think that there's a hybrid here where, you can allow people the freedom to be able to take time off where they're perhaps not fully off. They're working or could be traveling. And then, of course, there's regular time off. But the ability to be remote, I think, allows people to also be happier, which influences the culture to an extent, right? If someone, only has a couple of weeks of vacation a year that they can take, but they get an extra 2 where they're allowed to work full-time hours, but in a remote place, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, it's always funny too, because I remember when I spoke to a lot of CEOs during the height of the pandemic, and they saw things develop with people working from home. To a man, Milan, everyone said, I'm so surprised that my workers were so productive outside of the office. And every time they said that, I'm like, well, if you didn't trust them, why did you hire them? It's so weird how people feel like they need to be able to look outside their office to see if people are working, that they're getting their job done. And I'm telling you, in a way, I feel like companies deep down didn't want remote work to work. You know what I mean? Because they saw the data that once companies started forcing people back to work, people were like, all right, well, show us the data that said that our work fell off. And no one could ever show it. I mean, I'm sure there were cases at some places. So it is kind of, it's just frustrating to me that you see a lot of leadership depend on being able to poke their head out of the office or run into someone in the water cooler to describe what their culture is. You know, it's but in a way, you know, Gen Z is I don't think you guys are here for that. Like, I think you guys, I feel like you are definitely the hybrid work people where you like the idea of working in office maybe once a week or twice a week, but then being able to work your own hours at home and do whatever, which do you feel like that's like your generation, like that's something that your generation will lean into, the more of the hybrid approach as opposed to full in office or full remote?
I do. I think that my generation will definitely lean into significantly wanting to work remotely. But there will, again, be those cases of wanting to be in person. And I still think that there is value to that in certain cases. But I think what's interesting, and to take this back to my original point a bit about remote work, is that, that whole mentality about seeing people being productive in the office is inaccurate, right? There's no data to prove that when you're looking at those individuals sitting there behind a screen, that they're actually doing anything that's generating value for the companies. And so I think that in a remote culture that is successful, where there is excellent operations and project management, there's a lot of transparency where people actually develop understanding for what everyone else is doing for each other, because you have to communicate, right? The only way that it can work is if you're constantly aligning with each other, because you're not right next to each other. And so that, I think, allows individuals to be able to really excel in a remote culture, right? You have your freedom and you're proving that you're delivering, because there's all of these amazing tools and project management softwares that we now use to make it really seamless. It's beyond the days of Salesforce now. It's a gamified way to be productive at companies and see your value.
Well, and I think it comes down to manager versus leader. The manager is the one that wants to look out because they want to validate their job. My job is all it is to manage people. But the leader has a bigger vision. And so I'm kind of circling back to you. So you're 23 years old, Milan.
Yes.
How did you develop these leadership skills? How do you develop them? How do you see yourself as a leader?
Yeah, that's a challenging question. So I guess, one, I've learned through amazing people. So one is you have to just constantly be willing to be wrong and to learn. And so I think anyone on my teams would admit that when I don't know answers to things, or when I am, struggling, I admit to it. But I always bring a solution-oriented mindset, which is, I can't do this right now, but I'm going to figure out how to make this work. And that's the whole ethos with startups, right? It's like you just have to keep pivoting whenever you hit a roadblock or pushing through it. So that's definitely the mindset I bring. I show up every day for my team the way I expect them to. I'm very transparent. So I talk about, whether it's in Slack or on Zooms that we do at all hands, or, we just smaller gatherings. It's just like sharing everything that's going on, whether it's fundraising, it's hiring, whether we're struggling with some challenge and trying to work through it. I tend to be very transparent, and the term servant leadership gets thrown around a lot. So I won't fully say that I am the most ideal servant leader, but that is what I aim to do. It's to hire really intelligent people who are perhaps smarter than myself, but especially smarter in their niches and their specifications, in their skill sets. So I bring them in and I learn from them, and it's kind of a combination of learning on the job while also staying hungry for new information, whether it's online, podcasts, YouTube, books.
Do you have any favorite leaders out there that you sort of take nuggets from, or maybe someone in your own life that's been a sort of big inspiration when it comes to your leadership traits?
Yes, there's a fair number of people, I guess I would say, but one of the people that I look up to a lot is Richard Branson, actually. The way he was able to create this empire of companies and really just employ people to these organizations that had amazing cultures that they loved working on, because they were either innovative projects or, delivering great things to the world, from Virgin Music to, aviation or whatever else. And so he's one of the people that, in terms of his work, definitely I admire and look up to, because that's kind of what I'm trying to do as well, right? Is build these companies that can be sustainable and employ people to work that generates, positive social impact for the world. So to do that and scale that, he's kind of the role model.
Cool. I mean, that's a pretty good choice. I mean, not a bad one to follow there, Milan.
No, not at all. But I would also say, like I grew up in the Silicon Valley, so like, all of the people that are there, my father being one, but also just like in that culture of founders and entrepreneurs and business people, like you were just surrounded by innovative people who are hustling to change the world. And so it's very inspiring.
So is your dad going to be upset that you didn't mention him as one of your inspirations, or do we have to worry about that later?
I just threw it out there.
Okay.
Both of my parents are definitely inspirations.
Okay.
My dad from a technical sense, and my mother definitely from a social impact sense. So
awesome.
Kind of the best of both.
Yeah, I don't want to get you in trouble there, so I just wanted to circle back on that one.
Thank you.
All right, well, give me the timeline here, Milan, because I understand Auto you're in beta, right now?
That's correct. We are in beta right now.
So talk to me about what's the next 6 to 12 months looking like for your team.
Sure. So right now our beta, we have 3 course partners. We have Coursera, we have edX, and we have Path Unbound. And the curriculum that we offer, the career paths that we offer, are digital marketing, software engineering, and graphic design. And within those, there's several different specifications or niches you could go down. And as well as we have the assessments I mentioned using AI and the recommendations and the experience assessor. So all of that exists in our beta today. And by the time we get to January, February is when we want to start to roll out our MVP. We haven't picked a specific date yet, but basically Q1 of 2023 is when you will be able to, anyone can come and sign up and hire individuals from our marketplace, can go through the assessments and be upskilled. But what's going to happen in that release and what we're working towards is, 1, adding tons of more career paths, 2, adding more partners that we pull from curriculum from. We want so much diverse content, and ultimately we do exist to support a lot of the curriculum creators out there, since we are not one ourselves. And then that marketplace is going to go live in the next couple months, and that is going to be where we start to employ some of our first users. So really the goal is to push to the top of 2023 to come out with this full robust ecosystem for the public. But during this beta, it's to kind of prove on a small scale that we can upskill users and we can make them hireable. We can give them tangible skills that people will want to employ them for. So that's what we're working towards.
Cool. All right, so that's the future of Auto. Let's talk about the future of Milan here. You've started now 3 companies, I believe. It's safe to assume you are what they call a serial entrepreneur. Do you just see yourself doing one thing and moving on to the next? Or do you see yourself being like the next Richard Branson, who has a lot of different companies under his one umbrella?
It's a great question. I imagine that at some point I might get tired or that, it just, you never know what's going to happen. One of these companies could end up just continuing to grow and needing me to innovate on it to keep working on the solution. And so, I'm quite passionate about what I'm doing here. And Auto is kind of that dream on a large scale, right? Employing people and getting this next generation ready to be successful and be this next generation of entrepreneurs. That's to an extent the dream. So I think while I look at Richard Branson and such, and the Elons of the world that are the CEOs of multiple companies, it's a bit tricky, right? Because I want to be very present for my teams, and I think it is important to have focus, but I do want to continue to build towards the problems that I see in the world. And so at some point that definitely means, putting each of the companies that I work on, making them sustainable enough to operate without me. So
cool.
Yeah, that's definitely a long-term dream. But for now, I am so focused and obsessed with what I'm building here at Auto. And I'm really grateful for this team that we've built as well, which makes it, the team is everything. So
that's awesome. Milan, thank you so much for the time. I cannot wait to see what else comes up of your career. At 23, I think you've got so much more to offer to this world, and you're passionate about what you do. And I think that's what makes a great leader. Because first and foremost, you got to love what you're doing, and then it's sort of becomes sort of like this infectious sort of feeling that permeates through a company. So you got the makings of a great leader there, Milan.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. It means a lot. Thanks for having me here and for going through all of these great questions and listening to me ramble on about, all of the geeky ways we can fix education.
No, I'm totally down. Milan, I could have used you about 20 years ago, but hey, listen, it's like they say, it's never too late to learn something, right?
Never. It never is. And that's what we want to do. Eventually in the future, we want to take anyone, at whatever age they are, if they want to pivot their career, their industry, be able to figure out where they are and help them go. So hopefully it won't always be just for the young people, but definitely that's the start.
Thank you, Milan. Have a good one.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
He is Milan Kordestani. He is the founder and CEO of Audo. That's spelled AUDO. And that's it for this episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I would love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please, don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.